most of us, if we think back, will remember an ad that Coca-Cola put out years ago when they said, Coke, it's the real thing. And then they did something interesting. They remade it and reintroduced it again as the real thing. If it was the real thing to begin with, why remake it? It was already authentic. But you see, most of us today struggle with this idea of authenticity. And if you're going to be an effective leader, it comes with a high level of being authentic or being real. Someone asked Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks, what's the most important quality for a person in a leadership position today? And his response was to display vulnerability. You see, displaying vulnerability is one of the most difficult things that you and I will do in our lifetime. It's one of the most difficult things that we face as leaders. We want to give other people the impression that we know what we're doing, that we have it all together, we know where we are, where we're going, how we're going to get there, what it's going to look like. But to ask us to be vulnerable, that's a whole nother issue. In reality, most people spend their entire life trying to be replicas. We see people do this all the time. A young teenage girl will see one of her Hollywood idols dressed a certain way, and next thing you know, the young girl is dressing the same way. We'll hear someone say something in a certain way, the next thing you know, we're mimicking what they say and exactly how they say it. Now, I'm a product of the 60s. And if you're not familiar with the 60s, first let me say it was a great time to be a teenager in the 60s. But it was also an age of nonconformity. We proudly proclaim that we are nonconformist. We're being our individualistic self. We talked about being authentic and being real, and if anyone was considered to be phony, they were referred to as plastic. Well, I happened to pull out a picture the other day of when I was in high school, and I noticed something rather odd that I didn't notice back in that day. We all wore our hair in the same identical way, and we were all dressed identical. So much for nonconformity. I have to ask myself the question, if being authentic is so important, why do we spend so much time trying to be like everybody else? I think back to the days when I worked on a television show for CBS, and you would see the actors, they would get into their role and they would play act on a stage, and they became somebody totally different than who they really were. The role was nothing like the individual. It even carries over into businesses. It carries over into the church. It carries over into every area of our society. People dress up, they clean up, they put on the smiley face, everything's great and wonderful. And all the while they're being beaten down with a club of life that's crushing them day by day. We're living in a battleground today between authenticity and image. We tend to care a little too much about how people see us and what they think about us. Well, not to burst your bubble, but let me tell you how it works. When you get home tonight, roll up your sleeve, take your fist, get a bucket of water, put your fist down in that bucket of water, pull your fist out, and the hole that is left in that bucket of water is going to be how much people are going to miss you when you die. We tend to think of ourselves more so than we should. If we were to be so worried about what other people think about us, we would be even more disappointed at how little they do. You see, when we focus on what other people think and what other people say, and then we begin to conform ourselves to what people are saying, we become our inauthentic self, and our leadership suffers greatly. Kevin Cashman tells of coaching a CEO and one of his executive assistants. The CEO had some things he needed to clean up in his own leadership area, but authenticity was not one of them. However, his key assistant in the organization was caught up in her image. At a critical point in their interaction, the CEO asked the key executive, Michelle, do you want to look good or do you want to make a difference? You see, we have a lot of people in our culture today in areas of leadership that are focused on looking good, but they need to be focused on making a difference. So I ask you, do you want to look good or do you want to make a difference?